Hello, Trideltas, and welcome to another episode of our Lead Now Conversations on Racism. I am so excited to be joined today by Ashley Baskerville. Ashley is a trustee on our board for Tridelta's Foundation. She is an alumna of our Phi Kappa chapter at Cal State Long Beach out on the West Coast. Professionally, she is a mental performance coach and really utilizes growth mindset techniques and effective communications to help people. Currently, she is a master resilience trainer and performance expert for the armed forces. She's a founder of AB Mentality, where she is a sports psychology consultant and mental health coach working with youth, semi-pro, professional, and Olympic athletes. That's a lot. We are so lucky for the experience that and the expertise she brings to Tridelta. So thanks for being with us today, Ashley, as part of our Lead Now conversations.
Thank you for having me.
When I first read your bio and got to know a little bit more about you, I kept telling everybody, there's no other word for it. She is just a badass. Like this woman, what she does. I'm so impressed with what you do and how you do it and where you do it inside the armed forces. So I know we're going to talk about a lot today, but I'm just excited to get the chance to introduce you to the rest of our members and let them know about all the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So you had a special connection to Tridelta before you actually became a member. And I would love for you to share that story with our listeners.
So I actually had a little cousin who had been diagnosed with cancer, had went to St. Jude, and unfortunately passed away, but I got to speak to her dad the summer before I pledged. And he just was so adamant about how much Tridelta had helped him and the family and my little cousin. So he was so excited that I was going to a school that even had Tridelta as an option. And so when I went through recruitment, I was kind of just locked into, this is what I want. Sure, I'll give everyone else a fair chance, but this is where I want to be. I already knew.
Yeah, I think that partnership shows so much about our heart and things that we care about. And it's really special that you got to experience that before you became a member and then came into membership with that already. So that's a neat connection. I'm sorry about your family member, but I know for anybody that goes to St. Jude and experiences that place, Tridelta is a part of it. And so I'm glad you got that experience as well. So you have stayed involved with your chapter as an advisor and a volunteer. When the board level opportunity arose, what was the spark that kind of made you decide to take advantage of that opportunity or explore it?
Well, one, it was everything going on in our society. So with it being right in the middle of the George Floyd protests, for me, it was a way of being able to give back and doing something bigger than just showing up to protest, but actually making a systemic impact, essentially. But also my sisters were really involved. They were like texting me, like, did you check your email? Did you see this? And there was a point where I even put it up on Twitter, and a bunch of sisters and other sorority members and fraternity members that went to Long Beach as well were like, yep, that's you, do it. You're all over that. And I'm like, okay, you got to support me if I do this though. So it's been great. They've been a big support system. And even when it was announced that I was chosen, they were posting it all over social media, like, told you could do it, you could do it. So that was nice to have that behind me.
I love it. So it came from you, but it also came from those outside who know you well. And I love that they pushed you into it or gave you that extra push into it. You, as you mentioned, you were brought onto the foundation board as part of our effort to ensure that we have representation from sisters of color. I would imagine, and I've heard you talk a little bit about this, so I'm excited for you to share. What other types of diversity have you found you're able to bring to Tridelta's foundation board?
So I realized, and part of the reason I was a little apprehensive about applying as well is just, I'm a more recent alumni. I'm a lot closer to the collegiate age than a lot of the other foundation board members. I graduated 6 years ago. Okay. Yeah, 6 years ago. So not too long ago.
So it's interesting. I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I find myself bringing things to the marketing discussion that others aren't, and that I only understand because I have an insight into the world through them. And not, different ages, I think, bring us different ways to talk to people. And it's really important to have that kind of diversity as well as we try to communicate with 240,000 members between the ages of 18, 17, and 100.
Even with I have a 14-year-old niece, and so I was trying to use social media to build my business, and she's like, "No, Auntie, you need TikTok." And I'm like, I think I'm a little old for TikTok. She's like, "No, it's going to be TikTok," and I've gotten a lot of success from that. So, being able to manage those levels.
Yes, that's something we've ventured into, TikTok, our new expertise that we have in marketing at Tridelta. So I want to talk about your work with servicemen and women, and that work centers around mental resilience, something we've all needed this past year. And want to ask you to you have sort of said a lot of this stems from, you've connected having mental resilience with having difficult conversations. And I think that's such an important connection. I'd love for you to connect those dots and talk a little bit more about that, because I think that's so core to the work we've all been doing around equity and inclusion. And I would love for you to connect those dots for us.
So I think there's a few reasons having those conversations are important. One is, we know that to be satisfied in our life, to be happy, we need connections. So having a connection to other people is it's almost like protective bubble wrap for your brain. And so having those extra people there to help us and support us is important. But if you can't have the trust to have those hard conversations, then that connection's really not there as strongly as you think it is. And sometimes we operate from core values and core beliefs that we're not even aware are being triggered in that moment. And if we can't have a conversation with someone and express to them what our expectation is, we can't expect them to meet that expectation. And oftentimes, I think as well, is just people say things, people do things, and they may have the best intent. But if we're not having those conversations, we're not speaking up, we're not making sure that we use our voices in the right way, then that change is never going to be done. Even if, like I said, they have the best intent, they mean the best things, but if it's wrong, you have to be able to say that, to have that conversation with them and make sure that it's in a way that you can still have that connection with them, because if you're going to speak up, they probably mean something to you enough that you want to keep them around.
Right. For Tridelta, as we step into this, you've talked a lot about challenging the status quo, and that's part of the difficult conversations that we're having. Why do we have to be willing to do this? Why is it important for Tridelta to step into those challenges and to step into those difficult conversations right now?
I think because, one, with social media, like we talked about, everything's kind of under a microscope. So now we are seeing a lot more people trying to dismantle the Greek system because they have a stereotype of what it means to be Greek. And right. Especially for me, going to school in Cal State Long Beach, like you mentioned, at the time when I was in college, Long Beach was one of the most diverse cities in the country. So my sorority experience isn't the same as someone who maybe went to USC or went to UT Texas. And that's okay, because I think that's part of the point, is it's about the diversity and about people from different backgrounds coming together and creating something great. But if we let that cookie cutter image, that stereotype image continue, then people aren't going to see the good and the beauty it is of being in a sorority and being Greek. And it's not all about hazing and silly songs. It's really, for a lot of people, that sisterhood. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting you talked about social media and so much of the conversations going on there. Do you yourself kind of have a difference or put any difference between having a tough conversation and calling someone out publicly on social media or having a conversation directly with someone and calling them out there? And is there a difference? Is there a time for both? How do you view those two venues?
I think having conversations in person, face to face, are harder. But I also think they have a bigger impact because you're able to look someone in the eye, you're able to express yourself with emotion, with context that you miss out on social media a lot of the time. Also, when we have those conversations on social media, it's usually not a two-way conversation, and people aren't as receptive to taking in the information that they're saying. They go directly into defensive mode. But I do think the beauty of social media is holding people accountable. Once it's on social media, it's there for forever. So people can't back out of it, pretend like that didn't happen, but you can also hold them accountable there. Hey, look, you did this and that's not okay. What do we, where do we move from there? I even think about being in Tridelta and some of the social media rules we had when I was going through my collegiate time. I still uphold that standard, like subconsciously, thinking about that, because it is the way that you present yourself to the world. And that is the image that people will see essentially for forever. Right. And so holding yourself to that standard.
Yeah. I love that you still do that. Because you are always an ambassador of Tridelta, yep. No matter what age you are, where you are. When you're a member, you're always an ambassador. So for our younger members who are really bravely speaking out on these topics, a lot on social media, but in conversations and elsewhere, how do we bridge the gap that exists between our older members and our younger members, as we all move through this conversation from varying, places of experience and understanding and energy, how do we really bridge that gap? How do we help our older members understand what our younger members are doing and why? And how do we help our younger members understand how to communicate with our older members? How do we bridge that gap?
I think continuing with social media, what the younger generations are doing is incredible. I think the power behind them, the awareness is amazing. And I think with the older generations, getting them to understand that times are changing. I think even when I was in college, it was just now starting to be socially acceptable to even talk about politics publicly. Now it's like people shame and guilt you if you're not talking about it, which is the complete opposite. And understanding that if we're not speaking up and we're not using our voices, then things will never change. People will think that it's okay because no one's speaking up against it. I think when it comes to merging the gap between the older and younger generations, it's listening is going to be a huge piece of it. Yeah. Understanding the tradition, but then also understanding the impact now and the perspective in which both groups are seeing things happen. I think sometimes we forget to listen. Everyone's just ready to speak, but you have to understand before you can really have that conversation.
Yeah, the understanding piece is so key to this, and being willing to understand where somebody who you don't agree with or you don't understand when you begin the conversation, where they come from, is crucial. So for you, you're fairly recently out of school, which means recruitment is not that far in your rearview mirror. Is there anything that as we've been trying to walk through the changes that need to be made around our processes and what we do in Tridelta, is there anything that stood out to you as you think about us becoming more equitable, more accessible, more diverse, that we could do, whether it's recruitment or anything else, just anything that you've thought back on your experience and said, gosh, I wish we did this differently?
I think what I'm starting to see now is what I wish. We just launched the new website, so if people haven't checked it out, they definitely should. But showing what Tridelta actually looks like. I think, again, it goes back to, for a while, there was this, it seemed like a cut and dry image or a cookie cutter image. And that was never the Tridelta I experienced. And I know for a lot of sisters, that's not what their house looked like either. So just showing the diversity that's actually in Tridelta makes a huge difference. I'm fortunate enough to get to work with Dr. Diane Peterson on the board. And from her being the first African-American in Tridelta to where we are now is a huge, huge jump. Wow. And I just wish we see more of the different races. We see more of the different perspectives more. And I know it's coming out, especially with social media, especially if you go to house pages, and just showing that everyone is different. Everyone's coming from different backgrounds, and that's what makes Tridelta special.
Yeah. Thank you for plugging the website. That was a labor of love last year, late last year, that we got done.
And I love it. It's beautiful.
That was one of our goals, was to make sure that we showed all of our members, and that it was really representative of the diversity of our membership. Knowing that not everything can be shown in a picture, not all diversity can be shown in a picture. So thank you for saying that. And I hope people do go visit the website, because it's
great. You should definitely check it out.
Well, I have so enjoyed getting to know you today and talking about your experience. And again, just I think you've been such a fabulous addition to the Board of Trustees and just to our leadership overall. I know you participated in our mental health revamp that we did at the end of last year, and it's still available. So if anybody would like to check that out on leader.org, we have a new series on navigating stress and uncertainty, and there's a lot of that to go around right now. But you can check Ashley out as part of that. Where else can our viewers go to see more about your work and what you're up to?
So most of my work is available at abmentality.com or at abmentality on essentially every social media platform, because my niece got me to join TikTok. So you can catch me there as well. So Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram.
I love it. Well, thank you for giving us the time today and visiting with us and sharing your experience. And we hope to hear a lot more from you in the future.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope all of you are tuning in to see all of our Lead Now conversations. This may be our 8th or 9th one, and they're all really powerful and just display the caliber of members that we have in Tridelta. And so I hope you all will take a chance to go view those and check out Ashley and her work. And thank you all. Delta love.